You guys really don't think I drank a Bud Light on April 1st, do you? Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. Today we're going to take a look at 3 different sets of addressable RGB fans that have come out in the months since CES. We're going to go over pros and cons, installation, looks, and maybe some performance, and find out which one, if any, is right for you. Starting all the way on the other side of the table is the Fractal Design Prisma AL12. This is a 3-pack of addressable RGB 120mm fans that'll run you about $60. In the center here is a high static pressure set of fans. It's the Crown series from Inwin. This is a pair of 120mm fans, and this will run you about $40 for this kit. Last but not least from Deepcool is the MF120S pack of fans. This is a 3-pack of 120mm fans, and the most unique design that I've seen yet, and you'll see why when I pull them out of the package. A 3-pack will run you about $90. So let's get these things out of the box and see what they look like. Let's go ahead and start with the Fractal Prisma AL12. Oh, the most graceful unboxing ever. There. Give me the fans. There we go. Pretty good looking fans, if I do say so myself. I really do like the translucent blades, and I'm looking forward to seeing what these look like in a case. Unfortunately, the one thing I don't like about this kit is the only accessories included are the pack of screws. There's no addressable RGB controller included in the box. Now, Fractal Design does make one, it's the Adjust R1, but it is an additional cost, so keep that in mind when picking up these fans for $60. The way these are designed is they can be daisy chained, so if you have a single header on your motherboard, you can plug one of the fans in and then daisy chain them back to the other 2 fans. Not the greatest design. I would rather see an RGB hub included in the box, or even a controller itself that I could wire everything to. Alright, next let's check out the Inwin Crown 120s. Now, I did previously use a set of these in the 140mm version, if you remember my 7820X build inside the Fractal Design Meshify S2. I was really happy with the fans as far as the kit itself, and I did use the included RGB controller to control those. Classic Inwin packaging here with individual baggies for each individual part that you could ever possibly need. Like I said, there is an included RGB controller with just a single SATA power cable, which is very nice. And then the fans themselves. The thing I really like about these is they are actually daisy chainable, so you only need one RGB plug to plug into one fan and then daisy chain into the other. Now, an interesting design on this one is the entire fan hub spins. There's no gap between the frame of the fan and the fan blades itself. It's all one unit. Now, I have seen these ones work before. As I said, I used the 140s previously. More of a translucent and clear blade design, which is very, very pleasant. And finally, the Deepcool MF120S. In a package design that reminds me of trying to get into a Mad Catz third-party controller. So there are the fans and a huge box of accessories here. My goodness. So first up, we've got 3 voltage step-down adapters, so if you want the fans to run at a much slower RPM, those are included in the box. So we have a box of radiator screws, which is kind of interesting, not actually case fan screws. Also inside, we do have Deepcool's RGB controller, which is nice. Again, a single SATA power cable and the controller lead itself. And one thing I've really been giving Deepcool a lot of props for lately is their inclusion of all the ancillary accessories in the box. Now, keep in mind, this is the most expensive kit here at $90, but it also includes a 4-port PWM fan hub, as well as a 5-port RGB hub. This is normally something you'd have to buy outside of the kit itself, which would raise the price of the other kits. See the Fractal Design fans, which don't come with any cables or accessories. And then we've got these silencer mounts, which should look very weird on these fans, and I'll show you why. So if you thought the Inwin fans were a little bit unique with their spinning frame design, these ones don't even have a frame. They're just an H bracket that sits on top of this, and the fan spins underneath that. Seeing as the Deepcools use a metal frame, they do look very nice, but they're going to bring their own set of challenges when mounting these into a case or onto a radiator. They do include this set of radiator mounting screws, which is very nice, but it's the orientation that might get you. These have to be mounted in a push orientation, as they can only be screwed in from one direction. For mounting these as case fans, it does include these rubber standoffs, but we stopped using these around the early 2000s because they're kind of fragile and really only a one-time use item. Let's go ahead and get these fans installed into my Fractal Design Meshify S2. Now, keen-eyed observers might know that I've already got a set of the Crown 140s installed in this case, so that's what we're going to use for reference in this. Today, we're just going to focus on the looks, installation, and the features of these kits, rather than the raw performance data. Honestly, if I did any temperature performance data on this kit today, I don't think you're going to get too much out of that. So let's start with the Inwin Crowns. Now again, these are the 140mm variety. Looks-wise, these are very, very pleasant, although the lighting is very, very centralized to the fan hub, and you can see the individual RGB LEDs inside of there. There's only 6 inside of the central fan hub. The light really doesn't make it that much to the outside ring. When you have this chasing effect that I have going on here, it does light up the individual section though, which is kind of nice to see. So this is hooked up to the in-wind controller that does come with it, and there's a lot of different effects, from the breathing effects and the chasing effects. This one's one of my favorites, just the kind of going around in a loop showing the direction of the fan rotation. The one thing I really don't like is outside of the single color effects, so breathing red or breathing blue or something like that, all of the chasing effects seem to be of the unicorn rainbow vomit variety. And I mean, this is a great looking effect, but I would rather it just chase in green instead of chasing from red to green to blue to yellow to orange to pink to purple to white to whatever else. I mean, we've got our static colors, but that's not why I bought addressable RGB fans. And there's a good example of a chasing effect that, man, I wish it would just chase 1 or 2 colors rather than going through the entire rainbow. Acoustic-wise, these are just above a whisper. There's nothing really offensive about these fans or the noise that they generate. Overall, very, very pleasant. So as I said, the in-wind fans are daisy chainable. They're all connected through this one single cable that breaks out into your RGB controller, which has 3 different ends to it, as well as your PWM controller for your fans. One of the ends for the RGB plugs directly into the in-wind RGB controller, and that kind of makes sense when you think about it. I had a little bit of difficulty installing the crown fans, mainly because of the daisy chain system. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. The blessing is you only have to plug in 1 cable into your RGB and to your PWM to get them to work. The downside is you really have to think of the order that your daisy chain goes into your case and make sure that the connections make sense. The other problem I had was the design of the fans itself. Because the entire frame of the fan spins, it was actually rubbing on the daisy chain cable. So unless the cable was perfectly centered coming through the hole, it was rubbing on the cable, which long term will lead to some problems. Overall, a pretty good set of fans and a pretty reasonable price point, at least for the 120mm fans. The 2-pack of 120s will run you about $40 or about $20 per fan and get you everything you need to get running. The 140mm 2-pack runs about $65 or about $32.50 per fan, and that in my book is just a little bit more than I would like to see them be. And then here's what the in-wind 120 crown fans look like. You can see the same 6 LEDs, a little bit brighter towards the edge. I'm pretty sure they use the exact same LEDs, just in a little bit smaller frame. Noise profile, pretty much identical. They're nice and quiet. Yeah, good looking fans overall. So here are the Fractal Design Prisma AL12s all hooked up, and I ran into, well, a little bit of an issue. I think one of my RGB fans may be kind of DOA. The fan is spinning, and it seems to be working fine, and it is lighting up at least in 2 sections. You'll notice the other 2 are doing the exact same pattern as the motherboard, and again, that's because this is plugged into the J-Rainbow header on the motherboard. But these 2 fans are doing what they're supposed to be doing. This fan is not. Now, the interesting thing about this pattern is this is the fan that's plugged in directly to the motherboard. The other 2 are daisy chained off of this fan. So this fan is receiving the proper RGB signal that it should be from the motherboard and passing it on to the other 2, but it's not lighting up properly. So there it is with the front mesh panel installed. I really do like the look of the RGB effect in these fans. Rather than just seeing the individual RGB LEDs in the center, which you can see, these seem to be doing a little bit better job at diffusing the light towards the outside of the fans and giving that individual section look to the RGB lighting, rather than just a pinpoint of light that's kind of shooting towards the outside, if that makes sense at all. All the fan kits today do have the ability to plug into your motherboard and be controlled by the onboard software, whether it's the Asus AuraSync or the Gigabyte RGB Fusion, MSI Mystic Light, ASRock Polychrome, pretty much anything that's out there besides the Corsair Node controller, which is kind of its own proprietary thing. The nice thing about that is it does allow you to use the software that's built into your motherboard and configure the lights to do whatever you want them to do and synchronize with the other devices in your system. In the case of the Fractal Design Prisma fans, unfortunately that is the only option. Now again, Fractal does sell the Adjust R1 RGB controller, but it is a separate purchase. So as you can see, if all of the lights on my fans were working properly, they would be in sync with my motherboard for a pretty cool lighting effect through MSI Mystic Light software. Cable management wise, the Fractal Design Prismas are definitely a little bit worse off than the N-Winds, but then again, we're running more than one cable here. There's a PWM cable that plugs into a fan header to control your fan speed, and then there's an RGB cable that plugs into your RGB controller, but then there's also a daisy chain end off of that. So what you end up with is one cable that plugs into another to get your RGB to work. and they look something like that. So definitely not the easiest thing in the world to manage, but it's also not a terrible way to go either. All right, let's get into the deep cools. So these ones are going to be just a little bit different, and in fact, I don't think these are going to totally work inside of this case, but just for aesthetics wise, we're gonna go ahead and put them in there anyway, so you can kind of get an idea. The reason I don't think they're gonna work inside of this case is the Meshify S2 is designed to have the fans mounted to the back side of this grate. These are gonna have to mount up here. They might fit, they might not. I really don't know yet. I'm pretty much gonna guarantee not. But we're gonna go ahead and put them in there anyway, because this is really the only extra system I have put together right now that allows for fans to mount on the front. So here we go. So that's gonna go on something like that. So for slotted installs, these are not the way to go. All right, there's one. Not a fan of these so far. Boy, really short PWM cable. Wow. That doesn't even reach my PWM hub on the back of the Fractal Design case. Well, that's kind of concerning. That's another negative point. All right, they're in. There are the MF120S Deep Cool fans installed, but like I said, not the most secure of a mounting mechanism, and I don't think I can even put the door back on the front of this case because they stick out too far. So as I said, that is going to limit where you can install these fans at. But I will say these fans do look rather good, though the RGB effects on these are fantastic. Outside of the mounting difficulties, I've already ran into a couple things I really don't like about these fans. Obviously, the mounting mechanism, it's not good. I don't like the mounting mechanism. I wish these were a little bit more of a universal fit. Even though they do look good, it really limits what cases that I can install them into. Quality control. There's a little bit of a vibration happening in one of the fans right now. There's a yee, 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 yee happening that honestly shouldn't be there, and I don't think it's reverberating in the case or through the mount. I think it's just the fan that's making that sound. Number two, I was removing the peel from these, and I'll get a close-up of this. It took some of the plastic off the front of this middle fan here, so now there's some light that's shining through the front of this fan here that shouldn't be there. So quality control, I'm gonna say, even though the aluminum brackets on these are a really, really good quality, on some of the other areas, not so great. I also already mentioned the PWM cables on these are a little short. Now, like I said, they do include a PWM hub, which I am using to connect these, but the Meshify S2 has a built-in fan hub to it, and these cables from the front of this case were not long enough to reach that fan hub. Go and jump through some of the LED modes here. We are using the included controller in here. Very, very bright. I will say much, much brighter than the other two kits. So I'm not sure how well it's going to come up on camera unless I lower my exposure. So a decent amount of effects out of the included controller, and they all seem to be pretty well laid out and things that I could actually see myself using. Even the rainbow effects are pretty good looking, but especially the two color modes that are in here, like the blue and the white that's going on right now. I think those look great. A couple minor complaints about the hubs that are included, the PWM hub and the RGB hub here. The RGB hub is technically magnetic, although it doesn't seem to be strong enough to actually hold itself up. It does include a sticky pad on the back, which you would need to use, but I don't get why I should have to use that if the hub is magnetic. I would like to see some stronger magnets included in that so it didn't fall down. And the PWM hub that's included is not magnetic at all. It's just a sticky back. So I'd like to see just some stronger magnets utilized so I can just stick this into a case and not have it be a permanent fixture. All right, should I try to close the door? I'm gonna try to close the door. Yeah, not even close. It's hitting the front of the fans. So a pretty good look, but it's gonna need to be in the right case. So the fans do look good. I have some quality control concerns over the quality of the plastics that are used on it. The aluminum frames are fantastically sturdy, although I do wish I had plastic mounts so I could screw these into any case and actually be able to use them. Also, like I said, directionally you're going to be very limited on where you can use these. You're going to have to use these in a case that if you can set them up front, they have to go in front of the front panel and have your front panel be able to go over the top of those. Otherwise, they're going to have to be in the back of your case or blowing out the top. For radiators, that would work just fine. For case fans, maybe not so much. Although for radiators, I'm not sure how much static pressure these are going to be able to generate because there's no closed frame around them. You're not going to be able to force the air to go through. It may just come out the sides. So overall, I'm really torn on these ones. They look really good, but they're gonna have to be for the exact right situation. And I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up this video. There's definitely a lot of pros and cons to consider with each of these fan kits. With the in-wind crowns, they're a good high-quality static pressure fan, which might make them perfect for radiators, and the daisy-chainable cable makes cable management a breeze. However, the RGB effects on the in-wind crown seem to put them just a little bit behind both of the other two kits in this review today. The fractal design prismas seem like the most well-rounded fans out of the group and could be used in any situation. However, they also included the fewest amount of accessories, namely none. And finally, the Deepcool MF120s definitely have the most issues out of all of the fans that I reviewed today. They're certainly good looking, but you would need the exact right situation to use them in. As always, be sure to like this video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't like it, and subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Craft Computing, and if you're interested in financially backing the channel, make sure to look me up on Patreon, where a $1 donation gets you access to my exclusive Discord server. And the eagle-eyed among you might have noticed the dual processor motherboard behind me. That is for the much anticipated part 2 of my home server rack build. I know a lot of you have been asking about it, and I did promise it back in December? Anyway, a number of you have been asking for it. There's going to be a tutorial build on the server itself, as well as setting up Proxmox for virtualization, and a number of new tutorial services for home networking, so definitely subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that. That's going to do it for me on this one, guys. I ran out of beer about an hour ago, so instead of being able to cheers, I'm just going to say, as always, I will see you in the next video.